No niin, tervehdystä. Nyt taas uusi tämmönen video tekoälyllä tehty. Eli tuo keskustelu, mikä tuossa tulee jatkossa näkymään tai kuulumaan, on minun kirjoittamastani tekstistä tehty. Se on semmoinen T on Q kertaa P, eli hinta suhteen laskemisesta ja hintasuhteen arvioimisesta erilaisissa tilanteissa ja myynnin määrän suhteen. Ja olen sen aikanaan kirjoittanut, ja nyt tuolla Googlen NotebookLM ohjelmistolla, niin tämmöisellä tekoälyllä tein siitä tämmöisen podcastin keskusteluohjelman. Ja minusta siitä tuli varsin hyvä. Katsotaanpas, mille se oikein kuulostaa.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into some fascinating Finnish business insights. And don't worry, you won't need a Finnish dictionary for this one.
That's right. We're focusing on pricing strategies today, and we've got a really interesting source called TQP equals Hintasuhde.
Okay, TQP equals Hintasuhde. It sounds a little intimidating, I have to admit.
Yeah.
Is this going to be a math lesson? What is that exactly?
Oh, it is a formula, but it's much simpler than it sounds.
Okay.
It's all about practical applications for pricing.
Got it.
So T represents your total revenue, Q is the quantity of product you sell, and P is the price.
So total revenue equals quantity sold multiplied by price.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if I'm selling, say, 100 handcrafted birdhouses for $50 each, my total revenue would be, let me see, $5,000.
That's right.
Okay, cool. So I get the formula, but how does this help me make smarter pricing decisions in the real world?
It's all about what happens when you start playing with those variables a bit.
Okay.
The source walks through some interesting scenarios. Like, imagine you increase your prices by just 5%.
Okay, 5%.
Now, you might think, okay, I might sell a little bit less, right?
Right, that makes sense.
Let's say there's a 2% dip in sales because of that price increase.
Okay, so a small price increase, but maybe a slightly larger drop in sales.
Mm-hmm.
My gut says it would probably even out, maybe even lose a little revenue.
That's where it gets interesting. The source shows that in this scenario, you'd actually see a 2.9% increase in your total revenue.
Wait, hold on. A price increase leads to more revenue, even with fewer sales. How does that work?
It all comes down to the relationship between price and demand, a concept economists call elasticity.
Elasticity, right?
In this case, because demand for your product is relatively inelastic, meaning people are still willing to buy it even at a slightly higher price.
Okay.
So even though you're selling a tad less, the higher price you're getting more makes up for it, leading to that boost in your overall revenue.
Wow. So sometimes raising prices can be the right move. Huh, that's pretty counterintuitive. So it makes sense when you look at the numbers. Now, what happens if you flip that? What if you lower prices by 5%? Let's say you see a corresponding 2% increase in sales volume because of that.
Okay.
So conventional wisdom says lower prices, more customers, right? So revenue probably goes up, but maybe not by much because the price is lower.
It seems intuitive, but actually in this scenario, you'd see a 3.1% decrease in your total revenue.
Wow. So even though you're moving more product, you're actually losing money overall.
Exactly.
That really highlights how crucial it is to really understand how those dynamics work in your market.
Exactly. And that's where understanding your costs comes in.
Okay.
The source talks about kiinteimiä, which basically means fixed costs in Finnish.
Fixed costs. Okay.
These are the costs that stay the same regardless of how much you sell.
Right. Like your rent, utilities, maybe salaries.
Exactly. So even if a small price decrease brings in a few more sales, you have to make sure it can offset those fixed costs.
Like they're always lurking in the background.
Exactly.
I'm starting to see why this formula is so valuable. It really makes you think twice about your pricing. Now, we've been talking about adjusting prices, but what about setting that initial price in the first place? Any Finnish wisdom on that?
Absolutely. The source brings up something called katinlaskenta, which basically means markup calculation.
Katinlaskenta. Okay. I'm intrigued. How does that work?
Let's say you have a product that costs you 100 markup to produce.
Okay.
And you want to add a 50% markup on that product. They have a really simple formula to calculate your selling price.
Okay. Walk me through it.
You would take your cost, that 100, and divide it by 1 minus your desired markup percentage, which in this case is 50%, or 0.5.
Okay.
So it would be 100 divided by 1 minus 0.5, which equals 200. That means you'd want to sell the product for 200 to hit that 50% markup.
Okay, I see. That makes it really clear how much you need to add to your cost to make sure you're hitting your profit margin.
Exactly.
That's a really helpful formula.
And what's cool is you can also use it the other way around.
Oh, how so?
So if you know the selling price and the markup percentage, you can reverse it to figure out the original cost.
Oh, that's interesting. I could see myself using that to check out my competitors, see what they're charging, and maybe get an idea of their costs.
Exactly. It's a really versatile tool. Now, there is one important distinction I want to make here.
Okay.
There's a difference between markup on cost and markup on selling price.
Wait, there are two kinds of markup.
Yes, and it's something people often get confused about.
Okay, yeah, I can see how that would be confusing.
So, for example, a 50% markup on a €100 cost, like we talked about, means a 200 selling price.
Right.
But if you calculate the markup based on the selling price, that €200, it's only a 33.33% markup.
So it's the same product, same profit, but two different ways of expressing the markup.
Exactly. It all depends on if you're starting with the cost or the selling price.
That seems like a really important distinction, especially when you're comparing yourself to competitors.
Absolutely. You want to make sure you're comparing apples to apples.
I'm already feeling like I need to rethink some of my pricing strategies. This is great.
And we're just getting started. This source goes even deeper into sales targets and profitability.
Okay, great.
Yeah, it really highlights how important pricing is as a strategy.
Right. It's not just about calculating your costs and adding some percentage on top. It's about really understanding
those other factors.
It's about finding that sweet spot, right?
Right.
Where you're attracting customers, but also making sure that each sale is actually profitable.
And it's amazing how these, really straightforward principles can be applied across different businesses, different industries, different countries even.
Absolutely. And I think what I find so interesting is that it really puts the power back in the hands of the business owner.
Right.
You're not just accepting whatever price the market dictates.
Yeah,
you're actually
cutting the price.
Shaping your own destiny in a way by understanding these principles.
Yeah, you're being proactive rather than reactive.
This is great. This is really eye-opening. And to think, we're just scratching the surface here, right? There's so much more to pricing than what we've talked about so far.
Absolutely. There's a lot more to dig into, even just with what we have here from this Finnish source we haven't even touched on. How do you use this information to assess risk, especially in uncertain economic times?
Ooh, okay. Yeah. That's something I think a lot of people listening are probably struggling with right now.
For sure. And that's where understanding your break-even point can be super valuable.
Your break-even point. Remind me what that is again.
So that's the point where your total revenue equals your total costs.
Right. Right.
So you're not making a profit, but you're not losing money either.
Okay. Yeah.
And the source talks about how knowing that number can be really empowering, especially when there's so much uncertainty in the market.
Right, because it gives you a goal to shoot for.
Exactly. It's like a safety net, right?
Right.
You know exactly how much you need to sell to at least stay afloat.
Okay, that makes sense. So how do you actually figure out what your break-even point is?
Well, let's say you're launching a new product. We'll stick with the sock example. Why not? Okay. You've got your fixed costs, things like rent and utilities. Let's say those come to €1,000 in a month.
Okay.
And then each pair of socks costs you €5 to make.
All right, so 1,000 fixed costs per month, €5 variable cost.
Exactly. And let's say you want to sell those socks for 15 hours a pair.
Okay.
Using the Finnish formula, we can actually calculate your break-even point.
Really?
To cover all of your costs, you'd need to sell 100 pairs of socks each month.
100 pairs to break even?
Exactly, which gives you a concrete number to aim for.
Okay, that's helpful.
But obviously, we're not just in the business of breaking even.
But I want to make some money.
Exactly. So let's say you want to make a profit of €500 each month.
Right, 500 profit.
We can actually factor that in as well. To hit that profit goal, you'd need to sell 150 pairs each month.
Okay, so by selling 50 more pairs of socks, I'm not only covering those initial costs,
Right.
but also reaching my profit goal. That's great.
And the beauty of it is, let's say something changes, right?
Oh?
Maybe your material costs go up or there's a sudden dip in demand. You can use this formula to adjust on the fly. You can rerun your numbers, change your pricing or your sales targets, and stay ahead of the game.
So it's not just about making a plan and sticking to it no matter what. It's about being flexible
Exactly.
and being able to adapt as things change.
It's about making informed decisions, even when there's uncertainty.
This is fantastic. I'm learning so much.
I'm glad. It really is powerful stuff.
This is really making everything click into place now. So with my sock business, how do I actually put this break-even analysis into practice?
Well, we talked about your fixed costs being €1,000 a month and each pair of socks costing $5 to make.
Right? Those are the numbers.
And you're selling them for €15 a pair.
Yep, 15 euros a pair.
Based on that, your break-even point, where you're covering all your costs, would be 100 pairs a month.
Okay, so if I can sell 100 pairs, I'm in the clear, at least.
Exactly. But of course, you want to do more than just break even.
Exactly. Profit is the name of the game, right?
That's right. So we talked about a profit goal of €500 a month.
Yeah, 500 would be great.
To hit that goal, you'd need to bump up your sales to 150 pairs a month.
Okay, so an extra 50 pairs to not just cover costs, but actually put some money in my pocket.
Exactly. And what I love about this is that it gives you a concrete plan, but it's also flexible.
Right, because in the real world, things change all the time, right?
Exactly. Like, let's say the price of fabric suddenly goes up, or maybe there's a new sock brand everyone's talking about. You can just plug those changes into the formula.
And that helps me figure out if I need to adjust my own prices, or maybe how many more socks I need to sell to stay on track.
Exactly. It
Now,
takes the guesswork out of it and gives you the power to make informed decisions.
that's what I like to hear, informed decisions. This has been incredible. I feel like I've learned so much about how to think strategically about my pricing, all thanks to this finished formula. Who knew?
Right. It's amazing how a few simple concepts can completely change your perspective.
Absolutely. For anyone listening who's feeling a little unsure about their own pricing, remember this. Pricing is a process.
It is.
It's about finding that right balance between your costs, your value, and what the market is willing to pay.
And don't be afraid to experiment a little.
Exactly. Try things out, see what works, and most importantly, don't be afraid to ask for help if you need it. There are so many resources out there, and sometimes just talking it through with someone can make all the difference.
Absolutely. Those conversations can spark new ideas and insights you might not have considered otherwise.
Well said. And on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive on pricing strategies. We've covered a lot of ground today, from understanding your costs and profit margins to using that finished TQP formula to make smarter pricing decisions.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, we hope this inspires you to take a fresh look at your own pricing and unlock the full potential of your business. Thanks for joining us.